Help. 8, possible flush. King, possible flush. Ace, no help. 6, possible straight. Dave of love for the dealer. Ace bets. Check.
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 Check. Check.
Mr. President?
There is one fruit.
Oh, please.
There is one fruit.
Mr. President, check or bet, sir. Those are your choices.
There is one fruit.
Or you should feel free to give us a quiz on inane trivia.
There is one fruit whose seeds are on the outside. Name it, please.
Is it the kumquat?
Oh.
Check or bet, sir.
I bet 5.
Call.
Sit.
Fold.
Sit. Call. I see it. And I raise you 5.
Uh-huh.
Shovel.
Mr. President?
It's the strawberry.
Nice.
Well, thank you, sir. I just raised your bet.
Yes, you did, Toby. And I thought it was a bold move when you consider that Leo is holding the 6 you're looking for.
Do you call the raise, sir?
It depends.
Depends on what?
There are 14 punctuation marks in standard English grammar. Can anyone name them, please?
Period.
Comma.
Colon.
Semicolon.
Dash.
Hyphen.
Apostrophe.
That's only 7. There's 7 more.
Question mark. Exclamation point. Quotation marks. Brackets. Parentheses. Braces. And ellipses.
Ooh.
Oh.
Wow. Do you call the raise, sir?
There are 3 words in the English language, and 3 words only, that begin with the letters DW.
This is a pretty good illustration of why we get nothing done.
Can anyone name them for me, please?
3 words that begin with the letters DW.
Yes.
Dwindle.
Yes.
Dwarf.
Yes.
Dwindle. Dwank. Dwindle and dwarf. Come on, Princeton. We got dwindle. We got dwarf.
I see you 5 and raise you 5, by the way.
Dwarf. Dwindle.
Fold.
Fold.
Last card down.
A witch's brew, a magic spell, an enchanted forest where...
There is dwell. 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 Dwindle, dwarf, and dwell.
Well, the answer's correct, but let's check with our judges and say... Oh, no, I'm sorry. Time expired.
What? What time?
My time.
You have your own time?
How many did you get? All 14? Don't feel too bad. Toby is freakishly smart. If you've made it this far, you've already worked through clarity, flow, and grammar. Arguably, the easier parts to fake. Now we move into punctuation and mechanics, where the mistakes are quieter but far more revealing. These aren't just style rules. They shape meaning, structure, and tone. Every comma, dash, and ellipsis you allow or ignore changes the rhythm of the text and the reader's experience of it. Editors who skip this part tend to rely on instinct. That's not editing, that's guessing. So let's start with the most common culprit, the comma. It's everywhere, often misused, and surprisingly easy to mishandle, but it's where most editorial decisions begin. Commas are, in my experience, the most overused, underused, and inappropriately used punctuation marks across all genres and registers. Writers treat commas like salt, sprinkled liberally to enhance flavor, with little regard for structural function. Others weaponize them, deploying commas like tiny deputies sent to subdue refractory clauses and recalcitrant rhetoric. I'll let you in on a secret. Commas are not arbitrary. Neither are they discretionary. If you take nothing else from this video, take that. Now there are a lot of places commas can go, but this lesson focuses on the ones that matter most in editing, the ones that change meaning, clarify logic, or rescue a sentence from complete collapse. We'll cover serial Oxford commas, introductory elements, independent clauses, non-restrictive clauses and phrases, non-restrictive appositives, contrasting elements, coordinate adjectives, and elliptical constructions. Each of these has rules, each of those rules has exceptions, and most of those exceptions are based not on style but on clarity. That's what we're interested in. Let's get started. The Oxford comma, or serial comma, is the comma that goes before the last item in a list. Most of the major style guides require it, if not unilaterally, most definitely when clarity is at stake. The outliers, like Associated Press, New York Times Style Guide, and Reuters, prefer to play it fast and loose with perspicuity, unapologetically and deliberately omitting that final comma in favor of chaos. And, as you'll soon see, do-gooders and abuelas become the unwitting victims of this callous disregard. Now, consider this sentence. He dedicated the sanctuary to the rescued orangutans, Greta Thunberg and his mother. Without that final comma, it reads as though Greta Thunberg and his mother are the rescued orangutans, not honorary patrons, not ribbon cutters, orangutans. Full stop. Of course, what the writer meant was that he dedicated the sanctuary to three separate groups, the orangutans, Greta Thunberg, and his mother. Add the Oxford comma and clarity returns. To the rescued orangutans, Greta Thunberg, and his mother. That tiny mark separates species. It protects reputations. It restores dignity. This is why we use the Oxford comma. This is why we edit. This is why Greta won't return our calls. Let's talk about introductory elements. An introductory clause kicks off a sentence and usually sets up a time, condition, cause, contrast, or concession. It's a complete clause, meaning it has both a subject and a verb, even if it can't stand alone. Before the app even finished loading, she'd already forgotten why she opened it. That's your classic time-based setup, pause-worthy. Now compare that with an introductory phrase, which doesn't have both a subject and a verb. It's still setting the stage, but it's structurally lighter. Dismayed and disappointed, he went to the party alone. That comma you see, it matters. Introductory elements, whether clauses or phrases, should be followed by a comma to help the reader transition into the main clause. Otherwise, the sentence risks tripping over itself, or worse, leaving your reader as sad as this guy here. Next up, independent clauses. These are complete sentences, subject, verb, and a finished thought. They don't need help, but sometimes they get paired with other independent clauses for reasons. When that happens, and you use a coordinating conjunction like and, but, or so, you also need a comma before the conjunction. She thought her hairstyle was retro chic, but it was just a mullet with a facelift. Two full sentences, joined correctly, nothing remarkable, which is the point. Now, a comma splice is what happens when someone skips the conjunction and tries to connect two full sentences with just a comma. She wanted clarity. Clarity led to overthinking. Overthinking resulted in 3 drafts of the same email. The email was never sent. These are all complete sentences strung together with commas and poor judgment. It's wrong. You'll see it everywhere. Remember when we talked about restrictive and non-restrictive clauses back in the grammar lesson? A non-restrictive clause adds extra information about a noun. You could delete it and the sentence would still work. Slightly less descriptive, maybe, but grammatically and syntactically whole. These usually start with who or which, and they need commas to set them off. The man who is limping slowly down the sidewalk kept looking over his shoulder for some reason. We don't need to know he was limping. It's there for texture, possibly guilt. Clauses that begin with that, like this one, are restrictive. The information provided by the clause is necessary information. Unlike non-restrictive clauses, these are not set off by commas. Next up, appositives. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that sits next to another noun to explain or rename it. My neighbor Steve, the one who collects vintage staplers, just bought a goat. That little phrase in the middle, that's the appositive. Explains who Steve is, doesn't make the goat less confusing, but that's outside our scope. Just like clauses, appositives can be restrictive or non-restrictive. If the info is essential, restrictive, no commas. If it's extra, non-restrictive, commas go around it. The guest who threw her wine at the pianist was escorted out. Restrictive. no commas. Table Talk Diner, a garish orange eyesore, stands proudly overlooking the river. Non-restrictive. You could remove the eyesore part and still know which diner we're talking about. Now people panic when they see appositives. They start throwing commas in everywhere like it's a fire drill. Please don't. My friend, Cody Prescott, owns the resort. This only makes sense if you have exactly one friend. I bet you'd have more if you knew how to punctuate properly. Maybe next time you'll think before you start over seasoning. Otherwise, my friend Cody Prescott owns the resort. Let's talk about contrast. When you're setting up a comparison, or more often a correction, you'll usually need a comma, especially when that contrast starts with not or follows a kind of this, not that rhythm. For example, in the sentence, the tone was playful rather than sarcastic, the comma helps signal the shift in direction. It's not a detour so much as a polite recalibration. In the not uninspired statement, he adopted a proboscis monkey, not an orangutan, the comma makes it clear he made a very specific and frankly bold choice. If you skip the comma, your meaning might still survive, but it'll be hobbling a bit. Coordinate adjectives are two or more adjectives that each describe a noun individually and to the same degree. These adjectives are separated by a comma. However, two or more adjectives are not always coordinate. Sometimes they build on each other in a specific order and don't require a comma. These are called cumulative adjectives, and they work together to form a single unified description. Quick test. If you can reverse the adjectives or add and between them without it sounding weird, they're coordinate. If not, they're cumulative. Run the test on this sentence. He wore an itchy wool superhero cape. Could you say he wore an itchy and wool superhero cape? Maybe, but people might look at you funny. Could you say he wore a wool itchy superhero cape? Nay again. Well, maybe. You might say a wool itchy superhero cape if you're distinguishing it from other itchy superhero capes made of different materials. In that case, wool and itchy are separate, equally relevant descriptors, so the comma makes sense. However, this line of thinking is making me uncomfortable, or itchy, maybe both. 99.999 times out of 100, itchy wool superhero cape doesn't pass the test. No comma. She rode a sparkly inflatable unicorn to jury duty. This does pass the test. You could say she rode a sparkly and inflatable unicorn to jury duty. You could also say she rode an inflatable sparkly unicorn to jury duty. The sentence needs commas and possibly therapy. Let's look at some more examples. The report outlined a radical, data-driven, ethically fraught solution to the crisis. First, a radical, data-driven, ethically fraught solution. Without commas, it reads like a last-minute grant proposal. With them, a radical, data-driven, ethically fraught solution, each adjective carries equal weight. They pass the and test and the reversal test, which are more reliable than your gut. Next, we examine the subtle psychological effects of long-term systemic bias. This one doesn't need commas. Long-term and systemic work together to describe the type of bias. You can't reverse them or stick and in the middle without making it weird. The initiative was funded by an obscure European academic council. Same logic applies to an obscure European academic council. It's one of those times where a comma feels like it should go there but doesn't. The adjectives build on each other. They're not equal partners. Next, we must distinguish between sincere, well-intentioned criticism and strategic, ideologically driven sabotage. The final example's a little messier. Sincere, well-intentioned criticism and strategic, ideologically driven sabotage. Some commas are needed to sort out the descriptive layers. Otherwise, it starts sounding like satire and not the good kind.
Elliptical construction is when part of a sentence is left out because it's implied by context. You're basically skipping the boring parts that everyone already understands because repetition is exhausting and your reader isn't an idiot. For example, some editors prefer semicolons, others periods. We know others means others prefer periods. You didn't say it, but we got there.
Here's a more editorially specific example. Sandy brought the sunshine, Jen the snacks and a PowerPoint on late-stage capitalism, Elise the creeping awareness that nothing is truly knowable. In each case, the verb brought is implied, but more importantly, so is the existential dread. Welcome to publishing. Elliptical constructions are elegant, efficient, and a great way to trust your reader without spoon-feeding them. Just make sure the meaning is clear, and maybe check that your creeping awareness isn't doing the actual presenting. A semicolon is a punctuation mark used to connect closely related ideas. It's stronger than a comma, but not quite as final as a period. Think of it as the punctuation equivalent of a long, meaningful pause, like it's saying, I could stop here, but I have more to say. Use it to separate two independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction. She wanted to keep yelling. He insisted she relax. It did not go the way he thought it would. Separate two independent clauses linked by a conjunctive adverb or transitional phrase. The results were inconclusive. In other words, we wasted 3 months. Balance rhythm or parallel structure when the clauses are tightly related. The error was subtle. The consequences weren't. Clarify complex lists where items themselves contain commas. Into the bar walked Ramon, a former priest turned gaming influencer, Levi, a rabbi with a podcast, and Doug, Lisbeth's older, slightly creepy brother. Exclamation points are among the most overused marks in modern writing. They're meant to convey strong emotion, but when used excessively, they dilute meaning and distract from the content. Whenever I see a document littered with exclamation marks, I always envision a 35-year-old mommy blogger writing about must-have back-to-school items and what to say when your girl tells you she's in love. Gasp! Not little Caitlin. In professional writing, especially nonfiction or academic work, they often signal a lack of confidence in the writing itself, like the authors trying to manufacture enthusiasm that isn't there. Their overuse can also make the tone feel unpolished or overly emotional. For editors, this is a red flag that the author may not yet trust the strength of their words alone.
Exclamation points do have a place, but that place is smaller than many writers think. They're acceptable in dialogue, especially in fiction, memoir, and narrative nonfiction, where they reflect natural speech and emotion. They're also standard in children's books and in formal writing, like personal notes or casual emails. In blog content or marketing copy, they can be used, but sparingly. One per post or ad is generally enough. Rely on voice, structure, and word choice to convey tone. Don't default to punctuation as a shortcut. Use them sparingly. In nonfiction narrative or memoir, they can be effective when conveying genuine emotion, but they should be used with restraint. For blog and web content, limit to one per piece and avoid them in sections meant to inform or establish authority. In marketing, they can work in taglines or headlines, but not in body copy. For public speaking or oratory, they may support an energetic or inspiring tone, but even then, overuse can weaken the message. There are also cases where exclamation points should be avoided entirely. That includes academic or scholarly writing, professional reports or proposals, journalism, and anything where credibility, neutrality, or clarity is a top priority. As a rule of thumb, if the punctuation is doing the emotional heavy lifting, it's worth reassessing. A strong sentence should carry its own weight without relying on punctuation to make it feel impactful. Dashes, 3 marks that look nearly identical, behave nothing alike, and are frequently used interchangeably, usually incorrectly. Time to sort that out. Let's begin with the hyphen, the shortest and simplest of the dash family. A hyphen is used to join words or word elements and sometimes to divide a word at the end of a line. Its primary purpose is structural, not decorative, and although it's small, It's also one of the most misused punctuation marks. Here are the 5 most common uses. Compound modifiers, when 2 or more words work together to describe a noun. For example, cost-effective solution. But remember, no hyphen if the compound comes after the noun. The solution was cost-effective. Prefixes, especially when attached to proper nouns or when the combination looks awkward. Examples include co-editor, anti-intellectual, and non-native. Compound numbers and fractions used as adjectives, say 21 applicants or a 2/3 majority, but not the vote passed by 2/3. No hyphen there, because it's not modifying a noun. Spelled out numerals and compound terms like 99%, 18th century literature, or all-American team. Suspended hyphenation, used to save space and avoid repeating parts of compound modifiers. For instance, short and long-term goals, or first, second, and third year students. The key takeaway, use hyphens for clarity and structure, not for flair. We'll cover N dashes and M dashes next. Now we move to the N dash, the middle child of the dash family. Slightly longer than a hyphen, but not quite as dramatic as an M dash. Its main job is to indicate a range, usually numbers, dates, or time spans, and it should be read as to or through. It also connects related elements, like a London-Paris flight or a final score of 101 to 13. There are 2 main use cases here. First, continuous ranges, chapters 13 to 15, the years 1993 to 2000, and so on. Second, to connect pairs that show a relationship, like the London-Paris train departs at noon. But watch the prepositions. When a phrase like from or between introduces the range, the N dash no longer applies. You'll need to use to or and instead for parallel construction. So, she was in college from 2019 to 2022 is correct, not from 2019-2022, which is grammatically inconsistent even if visually tempting. Same thing with time. He naps between 11:30 and 1:30, not between 11-1:30. The M dash creates a break in sentence structure. It's more emphatic than a comma, more casual than a colon, and less intrusive than parentheses. It's incredibly versatile, but that flexibility means it should be used sparingly and with purpose. Let's look at the primary ways the M dash is used. To mark an abrupt break or interruption in thought. The parachute, though brand new, didn't open. To insert an emphatic or parenthetical phrase. He brought all the materials, except the actual bananas. To replace a colon before an emphatic explanation or summary. Only one thing mattered: dessert. To indicate interrupted or faltering speech. I thought, wait, are you serious? To indicate missing portions of words or dates. The note was signed by M, with no last name and no return address. Now, a few guidelines. Avoid letting M dashes pile up when commas or clear sentence structure would be more effective. Don't use more than 2 in a single sentence. Don't put spaces before or after the M dash. Don't use a hyphen or N dash in its place. They are not interchangeable. And finally, consider tone and audience. M dashes are less formal than colons or parentheses, and overusing them can weaken their impact. Quotation marks are used to show that the words inside them are taken directly from another source, or spoken aloud. In American English, and especially in Chicago style, the default is double quotation marks. For example, this is a complete sentence, she said. Now, what about single quotation marks? In American English, they're pretty much wallflowers, rarely used alone. Their main role is to mark a quote within a quote. So you'd write, and then she said, "That's not my problem," and walked away. See what happened there? That inner quote It gets single quotation marks because it's nested inside the main one. In British English, you might see it flipped, single marks on the outside, double on the inside. But Chicago style sticks to the American rule, double first, then single for quotes within quotes. Let's go through the main uses of quotation marks. 1. Direct speech or dialogue. This is the best day of my life, she said. If someone actually says it, you need quotation marks. Simple. 2. Direct quotation from a source. The article states, no further action will be taken. Whether you agree or not, if you're quoting, quote precisely. 3. Titles of short works. This includes things like articles, short stories, poems, and yes, TV episodes. I just watched the Gaza episode of The West Wing. 4. Titles of speeches, lectures, or unpublished works. Her lecture, Building an Inclusive Classroom, received a standing ovation. If it's not a formally published work, use quotation marks instead of italics. 5. Words or phrases used as words. The word literally is often misused. Quotation marks work here, but italics are also fine. Pick one style and be consistent. 6. Translations or glosses of foreign terms. The Latin veritas means truth. We translate terms in quotation marks the first time we use them. 7. Technical or unfamiliar terms on first use. The data showed evidence of photo-bleaching, the irreversible destruction of fluorescence. Use quotation marks only at first mention. After that, drop them. Your reader is in the know. 8. Nicknames in the middle of full names. Franklin D. Frank Smith. Quotation marks go around the nickname if it's inserted between the first and last names. Style tip. Quotation marks are not a substitute for tone. If you're being sarcastic, ironic, or skeptical, just say so. Don't rely on punctuation to do the heavy lifting. Ellipses are used to indicate the material has been omitted, most often from quoted text. They let the reader know that part of the quote has been left out, but the overall meaning remains intact. For example, the results of the experiment were inconclusive. Ellipses should consist of 3 spaced periods, each separated by either a regular space or a non-breaking space. In Microsoft Word, you can type a period, then press Ctrl-Shift-Space and repeat that 2 more times to format it correctly. Avoid using the single character ellipsis symbol. And if you're omitting text after a complete sentence, use 4 dots, the standard 3 plus a period at the end of the sentence. A few important reminders. Don't begin a quote with an ellipsis. Simply start the quote directly. Don't trail off in nonfiction writing. Ellipses are not a substitute for unfinished thoughts. Avoid using more than 1 ellipsis per paragraph. Most importantly, don't alter the meaning of the original quote. Ellipses are a tool for clarity, not for changing context. Used carefully, ellipses can help tighten quotes without distorting the source. That wraps up punctuation and mechanics. Here's a quick recap of what we've covered in this section. We started with commas, looking at common rules, patterns, and problem areas. Then we moved into semicolons and how they connect independent clauses or clarify complex lists. Next came exclamation points, and when it's appropriate or not to use them in nonfiction, narrative, or professional writing. From there, we broke down the 3 types of dashes, hyphen, n dash, and m dash. We looked at what each one does, how to tell them apart, and where they tend to show up. Then we covered quotation marks, straight versus curly, basic usage, and how they interact with other punctuation. And finally, we looked at ellipses, what they're for, how to format them, and when to use them with restraint. Next, we'll move into formatting and capitalization, where we'll look at structure, consistency, and the choices that shape how a document reads on the page.
Thanks for watching our punctuation and mechanics lesson for copy editing and proofreading. Up next, Capitalization and formatting, where we'll cover what does get capitalized, what doesn't, and how to handle all those tricky formatting choices that affect how your text reads on the page. If you found this helpful and want more, go ahead and like the video and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next lesson.